From memorizing every phone number you needed to survive, to getting publicly destroyed by a teacher reading your note out loud, to making a mixtape that took an entire Sunday and existed in exactly one copy in the world, these are 20 things everyone did in the 80s that are completely gone now. Number 1. Memorizing phone numbers. You had 15 to 30 phone numbers stored in your head at all times. Your best friend, your grandparents, the pizza place, your mom's work line, the neighbor whose house you might end up at after school. All of it was memorized because there was no other option, and forgetting meant you just didn't make the call. Your phone now contains 400 contacts, and you know exactly one number by heart, your own, and you had to think about it just now. An entire cognitive skill that every human being on Earth possessed in 1985 is functionally extinct, and nobody held a funeral for it. Number 2. Rewinding VHS tapes. You rented a movie, watched it, and then had to decide what kind of person you were. Rewind it before returning it like a decent human being. Or don't, and let the next person deal with it, which is what most people did. Blockbuster knew you didn't rewind and charged you $1 for lack of decency. You paid it and did exactly the same thing the following weekend. Be Kind Rewind was not just a slogan, it was a moral position that an entire decade failed to live up to consistently. The late fee industry was built almost entirely on human laziness and the gap between who people thought they were and who they actually were when nobody was watching. Number 3. Calling a busy signal. You picked up the phone to call someone, and instead of ringing, you got a rapid beeping that meant the line was occupied, and you had 0 options. You could not leave a message, you could not see when they'd be free. You just hung up, waited some amount of time you decided felt right, and tried again. Some calls took 5 or 6 attempts. You just kept dialing. Nobody considered this a problem. This was simply what calling someone required, and the entire population accepted it without complaint, which says something either very patient or very concerning about people in the 80s. Number 4. Waiting for your song on the radio. You wanted a specific song. Not a search, not a playlist, not 3 taps on a screen. You turned on the radio, found the station most likely to play it, and waited. Sometimes 20 minutes, sometimes 2 hours. When it finally came on, you lunged for the tape deck and hit record and tried to capture as much of it as possible. The DJ talked over the ending every single time. Not occasionally, not by accident. Every single time on every single station across the entire decade, as if there was a training program specifically designed to teach radio hosts how to start talking at exactly the moment the song was winding down. You kept the tape anyway. You had no choice. That was it. That was your copy. That was the whole music industry for you personally. And you were grateful for 45 seconds of a song with a man talking over the best part. Number 5. Film photography. You had 24 shots on a roll of film, and every single one cost you money whether they came out or not. You could not preview it. You could not retake it. You pointed, pressed, and found out 3 weeks later at the drugstore counter that your thumb was covering the lens for the entire family vacation. Every photo from the 80s that exists today survived a process involving chemistry, a stranger at a drugstore counter, and complete uncertainty about whether anything came out at all. People now take more photos in a single weekend than most 80s families took in a decade. The 80s photos were fewer and worse, and somehow they were the ones people actually kept. Number 6. Passing notes in class. You had something to say to someone 3 rows over, and instead of waiting 5 minutes like a reasonable person, you wrote it on paper, folded it 8 times, and handed it to a stranger and trusted them with your reputation. That stranger handed it to another stranger. That stranger handed it to the teacher. The teacher read it out loud to the entire class, every word, with commentary, in front of 30 people, including the person it was about. There was no deleting it, no unsending it, no taking it back. Just 30 kids staring at you while your social life collapsed in real time at 10:45 on a Tuesday morning. Texting killed the note and saved an entire generation from having their most embarrassing thoughts read out loud by an adult with nothing to lose and a captive audience of 30 kids who were going to remember it forever. Number 7. Saturday morning cartoons. You woke up early on Saturday without an alarm, without anyone telling you to, with genuine excitement, because the cartoons were on, and they were only on for a specific window, and then they were gone until next week. No streaming it later. No catching up on demand. If you slept in, you missed it, and waited a full 7 days to find out what happened. And that was the entire agreement, and nobody questioned it. An entire generation of children developed the ability to wake up early and be somewhere on time specifically because of cartoon scheduling. The Saturday morning lineup did more for childhood punctuality than any parent or teacher managed in the same decade. It's completely gone, and kids now wake up whenever they want, open an app, and watch anything ever made by any studio in any country at any time of day, and somehow still complain there's nothing on, which is the most ungrateful sentence a human being has ever thought, and they think it every single Saturday. Number 8. Encyclopedia Sets. You had a question, and you went to the shelf where the encyclopedia set lived, pulled out the correct volume, and looked it up. If the information wasn't there, you went to the library or you just went without the information, which was a sentence that made complete sense in 1984 and sounds like a different language now. The encyclopedia set was expensive enough that not every family had one. If yours did, it was displayed prominently in the living room, like furniture because it essentially was furniture. 26 matching volumes that answered maybe 15% of the questions you actually had and took up an entire shelf doing it. Number 9. TV Guide. There were 4 channels and you still needed a printed magazine to keep track of what was on when. TV Guide came out weekly, listed every show on every channel for the entire week, and people read it with a highlighter like it was a work document. You circled the movies, you planned your evenings around it, you consulted it before sitting down. TV Guide was a top 10 magazine in the United States as recently as 1990. A printed schedule for 4 channels that you could have memorized in an afternoon was one of the best-selling publications in the country. The algorithm now manages an essentially infinite library, and you still can't find anything to watch on a Friday night. Number 10. Smoking everywhere. People smoked on airplanes, in hospitals, in restaurants while other people were actively eating food at the next table. There was a smoking section on flights, which was a row of seats in the same sealed metal tube, breathing the same recirculated air as everyone else, and this was considered a reasonable accommodation that addressed the issue. Some airlines handed out cigarettes as part of the service in the early 80s. The idea that you cannot smoke in a restaurant now would have sounded completely unhinged to someone sitting in the smoking section of a Denny's in 1983 ordering pancakes through a visible layer of other people's smoke. Number 11. Asking strangers for directions. You were lost. GPS did not exist for civilian use. You pulled over, got out of the car, and asked someone on the street how to get where you were going. They either knew or they didn't. If they didn't, you found someone else. If they did, you listened carefully, tried to hold the turns in your head, and hoped you got it right because there was no way to verify until you either arrived or ended up somewhere completely wrong. People in the 80s were remarkably good at giving directions because they had no choice, and everyone needed it from them regularly. That skill is gone. Nobody under 35 can tell you how to get anywhere without pulling out their phone, and most people over 50 have forgotten how to. Number 12. The phone book. Every household received a large physical, actual book containing the name, address, and phone number of every person and business in the local area, delivered to their door annually whether they wanted it or not. You used it to find people. The phone book was thick enough to use as a booster seat, and some people used it for exactly that. This is documented and widespread. The phone book now exists exclusively as a memory and a punchline. Nobody has opened one intentionally since approximately 2009, and nobody has missed it for a single day since. Number 13. Mixtapes. Making someone a mixtape was a serious undertaking. You sat by the tape deck for hours, queued up each song from the radio or your record collection, and hit record at exactly the right moment. You then labeled it by hand. You gave it to someone and hoped they understood what it meant. The playlist you can make on any streaming service in 4 minutes is the direct descendant of this. It takes 4 minutes and 0 courage. And you can send it to someone without looking them in the eye. And that is exactly what makes it inferior in every way that actually matters. Number 14. Boredom. There were long stretches of time in the 80s with absolutely nothing to do and no way to fill them. You could not pull out a phone. There was nothing to scroll. If the TV had nothing on and your friends weren't available and you had already read everything in the house, you were just bored and you had to sit in it until something changed. Kids stared out car windows for hours on road trips. They invented games out of whatever was nearby. They thought thoughts all the way to the end without interruption. Boredom is now a productivity concept that people pay to experience at silent retreats. In the 80s, it was just Tuesday afternoon, and you got through it the same way everyone else did, which was by waiting. Number 15. Blockbuster. You drove to the store, walked the aisles, and selected a movie based entirely on cover art and the paragraph on the back of the box. If the movie you wanted was already rented, you picked something else or came back tomorrow. The entire experience of choosing what to watch involved a car trip, limited information, and a genuine gamble on whether the thing you picked was going to be worth it. The box lied constantly. The image on the front had nothing to do with the actual movie in many documented cases, and there was no review system and no way to check. Millions of people sat through genuinely terrible movies in the 80s because someone designed an appealing box and they had already driven to the store and they were committed. Number 16. One phone line for the entire house. Your family had one telephone, one number, one cord, and if your parents were on it, you were not making a call. And if you were on it, your parents were standing in the kitchen pointing at their watch. And if your sibling was on it, you were standing next to them doing the same thing. Teenagers in the 80s conducted entire relationships through a phone mounted to a kitchen wall with a 6-foot cord, whispering with their parents 12 feet away, pretending not to listen. There was no privacy. There was no separate line. There was one phone and a negotiation every single evening over who needed it more and for how long. And the answer was always too long. Number 17. Showing up unannounced. You wanted to see your friend? You did not text first. You did not check their availability. You got on your bike or walked over or drove to their house and knocked on the door, and either they were home or they weren't. If they weren't, you left, or you sat on the porch and waited, or you came back in an hour. Showing up unannounced was completely normal in the 80s. Showing up unannounced now is considered alarming behavior or an emergency. Either way, someone is opening the door with their heart rate elevated, and that is a sentence that would have made zero sense to anyone standing on a porch in 1985, just trying to see if their friend wanted to ride bikes. Number 18. Calling the movie theater for showtimes. You picked up the phone, dialed the theater number, and got a recorded message that read every film title, every rating, every runtime, and every showtime for every screen in the building, in a single unbroken sequence at a pace that assumed you were ready with a pen. You were not ready with a pen. You put the phone down, found a pen, called back, and started from the beginning because there was no skipping ahead, and that was simply the price of seeing a movie on a Saturday night. If you missed the showtime you wanted, you sat through the listings for 4 other films you had no interest in to get back around to it. The recording did not care. The recording had a job, and it was doing all of it in order, and you were going to listen to every word because the alternative was staying home, and that was not an option. Number 19. Watching every commercial, there was no skip button, no ad-free option, no fast forward. You sat through every commercial and every break of every show because the only alternative was getting up, and the show was going to start again in 90 seconds, and you were not going to miss the beginning of the next segment over a paper towel ad. People watched the same commercials so many times in the 80s that jingles became part of shared cultural memory across the entire country. You still know the words to at least 2 commercial jingles from before 1990. You did not choose to learn them. They simply entered your brain through repetition, and they are still there, and they are never leaving. Number 20. Trusting the weather forecast. The weatherman told you there was a 30% chance of rain Saturday, and you made your plans and hoped for the best. No radar app, no hourly breakdown, no minute-by-minute precipitation map. Just a person on television with a pointer and a general sense of what the atmosphere was planning. And you either believed them or you didn't. And then you found out Saturday whether you were right. People planned weddings and road trips and outdoor events on a 30% chance of rain from a man with a map and a confident expression. Sometimes it rained, sometimes it didn't. You had already committed either way and the weather did whatever it wanted. And you adjusted because that was the deal and everyone understood it, and nobody expected anything different. 20 things that were completely normal in the 80s and are completely gone now. Not because anyone decided to get rid of them, not because they failed, just because something came along that made them unnecessary, and they faded out so gradually that most people didn't notice until they were already gone. What else from the 80s don't we do anymore? Drop a comment as it may make it into part 2,